That afternoon, the city was ablaze under the scorching summer sun. The streets buzzed with the usual chaos, cars honking incessantly, pedestrians rushing about, their hurried footsteps echoing off the tall buildings. Amidst the ceaseless energy of the metropolis, a grand motorcade glided smoothly through the streets. The gleaming Cadillac won, its polished surface reflecting the brilliant sunlight, commanded the attention of all who saw it. It was a sight that exuded power and prestige. Inside the luxurious vehicle, Donald Trump sat, focused intently on a report being read by one of his advisors. The low hum of discussion filled the cabin, blending seamlessly with the faint sounds of the city outside. But suddenly, something caught Trump's eye. His gaze shifted from the pages in front of him to the passing scenery outside his window. And in that moment, his world paused. There, amidst the hurried flow of pedestrians, stood an elderly woman. She was frail, almost swallowed by the bustling crowd around her. Her silver-white hair framed a face deeply marked by time and hardship. In her trembling hands, she clutched a worn piece of cardboard, its faded ink barely legible. Yet the words, simple and profound, stood out against the chaos of the street. "Please help me. My granddaughter needs a miracle." She stood in silence, her weary eyes searching the faces of those who passed, hoping for even a flicker of recognition, a moment of compassion. But the world around her remained indifferent. Some glanced her way briefly, while others turned their faces, eager to move past her existence as if she were invisible. No one stopped. Trump's chest tightened. He felt an inexplicable pull, something deep within urging him not to look away. He had encountered countless faces, shaken hands with world leaders, spoken to crowds of thousands, yet in this single moment, an unknown elderly woman held his attention unlike any other. "Stop the car," he commanded. His voice was calm, yet firm, leaving no room for discussion. The motorcade lurched to a halt right in the middle of the busy street. The sudden stop sent a ripple of confusion through his security team. The screech of tires and the honking of irritated drivers behind them only added to the tension. "Sir, this area isn't secure. We need to keep moving," one of the security personnel cautioned, his voice carefully measured. But Trump shook his head, his eyes still locked on the elderly woman. "No," he said with quiet determination. "I want to know her story." No one dared to argue. A heavy silence fell inside the vehicle. Then, without hesitation, Trump reached for the door handle and stepped out. The moment his polished shoes met the pavement, the world seemed to shift. The constant hum of the city softened, and all eyes turned to him. Some pedestrians gasped, realizing who had just emerged from the imposing vehicle. Phones were quickly pulled out, cameras capturing the unexpected moment as Trump walked with purpose toward the elderly woman. She didn't notice him at first. Her eyes remained downcast, tired from the weight of life itself. But when she looked up, her cloudy gaze met his. For a moment, there was only silence between them, the world around them fading into the background. "What's your name?" Trump asked, his voice softer than usual, but still carrying the weight of his presence. The woman hesitated, her lips trembling slightly before she spoke. "Martha," she answered, her voice fragile yet dignified. "Why are you here, Martha?" His tone was gentle, coaxing, but beneath it lay an unspoken promise that he was listening, truly listening. Martha took a deep breath, gripping her cardboard sign as if it were the last tether keeping her standing. "My granddaughter, she needs help," she began. "Her parents, they didn't survive the flood. It's just me now. But I don't know what to do. We lost everything, our home, our lives. I just want to save her." Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog, settling deep into Trump's mind. This was not just a plea for spare change. This was a cry for survival, a grandmother fighting against the odds for the only family she had left. Trump inhaled deeply, his gaze unwavering. "Where is she now?" he asked, already knowing his next course of action. Martha looked at him, her eyes filled with cautious hope. "Not far," she whispered. He turned to his team. "Get the car ready. We're going." A murmur of protest arose from his security personnel. "Sir, this area." Trump raised a hand, silencing the concern. "If she can live there, I can visit. If you're scared, feel free to stay behind." His tone left no room for debate. The security team exchanged uncertain glances before falling into step behind him. Trump placed a reassuring hand on Martha's frail shoulder. "Lead the way," he told her. And so, with slow, measured steps, Martha led the President of the United States through streets she had walked countless times before, though never with such company. The sight was surreal, the powerful motorcade creeping behind them as they wove through the city's underbelly. Martha's voice wavered as she spoke of the flood, of how the waters rose faster than anyone could react. How her son and his wife had fought to save their daughter but had been lost in the raging current. How she had clutched little Emma, praying for a miracle, only to find herself alone in the aftermath. "We lost everything," she murmured, her voice raw with grief. "Now it's just Emma and me, trying to get through each day." They turned down a narrow alley, where broken bricks and discarded debris lined the cracked pavement. At the alley's end stood a makeshift shelter, pieced together from plastic sheets and wooden scraps. The worn tarp covering it flapped weakly in the hot breeze. It was barely a home, yet it was all they had. Trump halted in front of the shelter, his gaze scanning the heartbreaking scene before him. Nearby, children with dirt-streaked faces played with empty tin cans. Adults stood at a wary distance, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. A small voice called from within the shelter. "Grandma." From the shadows stepped a frail little girl, no more than 10 years old. Her tangled hair framed her delicate face, and in her tiny hands, she clutched a makeshift doll fashioned from a plastic bottle and scraps of fabric. "Emma, come here," Martha called softly. The girl ran to her grandmother's side, gripping her arm tightly before glancing up at the tall figure before her. Her gaze was wary but curious. Trump crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. "You don't have to be afraid, Emma," he said, his voice warm. "Your name is Emma, right?" She nodded, still hesitant. "Can you tell me about yourself?" he asked gently. Emma looked to her grandmother for reassurance before speaking. "I don't remember much about that night. The water came so fast. My mom and dad told me to run. But they didn't make it." Her voice broke slightly, and she wiped at the tears threatening to spill. "Grandma works so hard. I don't want her to suffer anymore. I just want her to rest." Trump placed a firm hand on her tiny shoulder, his voice steady. "You don't have to worry anymore. We're going to change that." And with those words, the course of their lives shifted forever. The streets hummed with the usual chaos of the city, the scorching summer sun beating down relentlessly. Horns blared, and pedestrians rushed past one another, weaving through the urban sprawl. Among the many cars gliding through the streets, a particular convoy stood out. A fleet of sleek, black vehicles, moving with precision and authority. Cadillac 1, gleaming under the fierce sunlight, rolled steadily forward, carrying none other than Donald Trump. Inside the vehicle, Trump sat with a focused expression, listening intently to an aide summarizing a critical report. His thoughts were occupied with matters of national significance, his mind trained on strategies and decisions. But something outside the window suddenly caught his eye. A shift in his expression, brief but noticeable, signaled that his attention had drifted elsewhere. Through the tinted glass, he saw her. An elderly woman, frail and worn, stood near the sidewalk, holding a piece of tattered cardboard. Her stark white hair, tousled by the wind, framed a face deeply etched with lines of hardship and time. The message on her sign, scrawled in faded ink, was simple yet heartbreaking: "Please help me. My granddaughter needs a miracle." The crowd around her barely noticed. Some gave her a fleeting glance before averting their eyes, unwilling to engage. Others passed by without a second thought. But Trump kept watching. Something about the way she stood there, silent and resolute amid indifference, stirred something within him. "Stop the car," he ordered. The sudden command startled his security team. The lead driver hesitated for a fraction of a second before obeying, bringing the motorcade to an abrupt halt. The screech of tires and the sudden disruption to traffic drew puzzled stares from passers-by. In the vehicle, Trump's advisors exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir, this isn't a secure location," one of the agents cautioned. "No, but she needs help," Trump responded, already reaching for the door handle. A hush seemed to fall over the immediate area as he stepped out onto the pavement, his polished shoes touching down with purpose. The murmur of the crowd grew louder as people recognized him, some pulling out their phones, capturing the unexpected moment. Trump walked toward the elderly woman, his imposing frame moving with deliberate intent. As he drew near, he crouched slightly, bringing himself to her eye level. The woman looked up, startled but hopeful. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer than usual but still carrying its usual weight. She hesitated before answering, her voice frail. Martha. Martha, why are you out here? Trump pressed gently. Her hands trembled as she clutched the sign closer to her chest. My granddaughter, she needs help, she said, her voice quivering with emotion. We lost everything in the flood. My son and his wife, they didn't make it. It's just me now, but I don't know how much longer I can take care of her. For a moment, Trump said nothing. He simply absorbed her words, the pain laced within them. Then, straightening up, he turned back toward his motorcade. Get the car ready. I want to see where she's staying. His security team hesitated. Sir, that's not advisable. If she can live there, I can visit. If you're scared, feel free to stay behind, Trump replied firmly. No one protested after that. He placed a reassuring hand on Martha's shoulder. Lead the way. I want to meet your granddaughter. Martha nodded, her movements slow but determined. She guided him through the city's bustling streets, away from the glittering skyline and deeper into the neglected corners where life was measured not in aspirations but in survival. As they walked, people began to take notice. Residents of the area, initially skeptical, peered out of doorways and windows, their eyes widening as they recognized the man walking among them. What happened to your family? Trump asked, his voice gentler now. Martha took a deep breath, steadying herself. The flood came so fast, too fast. My son, Jack, and his wife, Laura, tried to get Emma to safety. They told me to run with her. They said they'd find a way out. But they didn't. The water was too strong, it took them away. I held Emma tight and prayed, but when we found Jack's body, it was too late. Her voice broke, and Trump saw the weight of her grief in her hunched shoulders. And since then, he asked quietly. I've done what I could, she whispered. Cleaning houses, collecting recyclables, but I'm old, and people don't want to hire me anymore. So I took to the streets, hoping someone would notice. But no one ever does. Trump's jaw tightened. Well, I noticed. The narrow alley they entered felt worlds apart from the city just blocks away. Here, buildings stood in crumbling disrepair. Trash littered the ground. The air was thick with the scent of dampness and neglect. At the very end of the alley stood a makeshift shelter, barely holding together with pieces of tarpaulin wood. This is home, Martha said softly. From inside, a small voice called out, Grandma. A frail girl, no older than 10, stepped out. Her tangled hair partially covered her face, but her eyes, large, searching, immediately locked onto the stranger standing beside her grandmother. She clutched a makeshift doll crafted from scraps of fabric and plastic, her tiny fingers tightening around it. Trump knelt before her. You must be Emma. The girl nodded hesitantly. Can you tell me about yourself? He asked, his voice as gentle as it had been firm moments before. Emma looked at her grandmother for reassurance before speaking. I don't remember much about the night of the flood, just that Mom and Dad told me to run. Since then, Grandma has been working so hard, but she's tired. I just want her to rest. Tears welled in her eyes, but she fought them back. Trump reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You've been very brave, Emma. And so has your grandmother. But from now on, you won't have to fight this alone. I'm here to help. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Trump turned to his team, his expression resolute. I want a full report on their living conditions and medical assessments done immediately. And not just them, I want to know about every family in this area. One of his advisors hesitated. Sir, perhaps we should leave this to charitable organizations. No, Trump interrupted, his voice filled with conviction. They've waited long enough. If a little girl like Emma can fight for her grandmother, we have no excuse to delay. Action starts now. Emma's lips parted, her eyes glistening with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Trump. I just want Grandma to stop worrying. Trump bent slightly, meeting her gaze directly. I promise you, Emma, this is just the beginning. You've done enough. Now it's my turn. As he walked back to his motorcade, the people who had once watched with skepticism now looked at him with something else, hope. The convoy rolled forward, but this wasn't the end of the journey. It was only the start of something much bigger. Their homes stood in quiet astonishment, eyes wide with disbelief. Healthcare workers moved swiftly through the narrow alleys, knocking on doors, checking on families, and assessing the dire medical needs of the community. Malnutrition, untreated illnesses, and infected wounds were prevalent. Each discovery painted a grimmer picture of how long these people had been neglected. When it was Emma and Grandma Martha's turn, a young doctor knelt before them with a gentle smile. "How long have you been enduring this pain?" he asked softly. Grandma Martha gave a weary smile, her wrinkled hand trembling in Emma's grasp. "I don't remember anymore," she admitted. "I just know I have to keep going. Emma needs me. She's all I have left." Emma squeezed her grandmother's hand, her eyes filled with fierce determination. "We're not alone anymore, Grandma. They'll help us. I promise." The doctor's eyes shimmered with emotion at Emma's words. He prescribed much-needed medication, gave clear instructions, and assured them that he and his team would return regularly to check on Grandma Martha's health. The presence of medical professionals in the slum didn't just provide relief, it ignited something even more powerful. Hope. Word of Trump's initiative spread like wildfire beyond the slum, catching the attention of organizations and corporations. They saw an opportunity, not just for charity, but for meaningful change. A renowned construction company pledged to rebuild the homes of displaced families, ensuring that every person had a safe and secure place to live. A major tech firm stepped in, providing solar energy systems to illuminate the slum, allowing families to have electricity without the burden of costly bills. An educational foundation announced a commitment to set up temporary learning centers, giving children like Emma the chance to learn while permanent schools were constructed. Emma, however, didn't wait for change, she became a part of it. Gathering children from around the slum, she began teaching them with old books she found. The sight of a tiny girl in tattered clothes standing before a group of eager children, guiding them through simple lessons, moved volunteers to tears. "If we want to change things, we have to learn," Emma told the children, her voice filled with conviction. At first, the children hesitated, unfamiliar with the idea of education. But slowly, they gathered around Emma, their curiosity overcoming their shyness. The makeshift classroom, built from wooden crates and cardboard, became a place of discovery and dreams. From a distance, an elderly woman watched the scene and turned to a healthcare worker. "She's not just a child," she said softly. "She's the light for all of us." Meanwhile, in his office, Trump monitored every aspect of the operation. He demanded hourly reports, refusing to tolerate inefficiency. He didn't see this as a momentary act of charity but as the beginning of a sustainable future. "This isn't about temporary relief," Trump declared during a virtual meeting with his team. "We're not just giving them help, we're giving them independence. I want a system in place that ensures when we step away, they can stand on their own." A week later, Trump held a press conference to update the nation on the progress. The room was packed as he took the stage, his expression resolute. "When I walked through that slum, I heard some of the most heartbreaking stories imaginable. But I also saw something else. I saw resilience. An elderly woman who refused to give up. A little girl who stood up for her family despite impossible odds. They reminded me of something important: no one deserves to be forgotten." He paused, letting his words settle before continuing. "We cannot change the past, but we can ensure a better future. This is not just an act of kindness, it's a commitment. And it doesn't stop with one slum. This is the beginning of something much bigger." A month later, in the heart of the once forgotten slum, something miraculous had happened. Where there was once only garbage and despair, a small park had been built. At its center, a modest monument stood tall, depicting a little girl holding her grandmother's hand, a symbol of hope and resilience. The inscription at its base read, "Hope begins in the smallest places." Emma and Grandma Martha stood before the monument, their faces glowing with quiet pride. Grandma Martha turned to Emma and asked, "Do you think a cardboard sign can change the world?" Emma smiled, her eyes twinkling. "Not the sign, Grandma. It's the courage to hold it up, and the kindness of those who stop to listen." Trump, watching the news coverage of the transformation, allowed himself a small smile. Yet his expression remained serious. Turning to his team, he said, "There are too many places like that one. We can't stop now. From today onward, this is our mission, to ensure that no one is forgotten. Get ready, because this is just the beginning." 2 months after the initiative began, the slum was unrecognizable. The once crumbling shelters had been replaced with sturdy homes. The streets, once littered with garbage and despair, were now clean and lined with solar-powered lights. Where there was once silence, there was now laughter. Children's voices filled the air as they attended school for the first time. Emma sat at one of the small wooden desks in the new learning center, her eyes shining as she absorbed each lesson. But more than that, she had become a teacher in her own right, helping younger children grasp the basics of reading and writing. "I believe that if we can learn to read and write, we can achieve so much more," she told a volunteer. "We won't be afraid anymore. And I want my friends to feel the same." The movement, now known as Hope for the Forgotten, had spread beyond the slum, inspiring change across the nation. More organizations and individuals joined the cause. A major construction firm pledged to build 50 homes for struggling families, promising to maintain them for the next decade. Leading tech companies installed solar energy systems in impoverished communities, providing free, renewable power. Educational organizations set up more temporary schools and introduced vocational training programs for adults, offering them a path to self-sufficiency. The impact wasn't just corporate. Communities across the country began taking action. School students organized donation drives for school supplies. Veterans formed volunteer teams to repair homes and mentor young men in need of direction. Celebrities and artists used their platforms to raise funds and awareness, making sure the mission reached as many people as possible. 3 months after the movement began, Trump hosted an event at the White House to honor those who had contributed. Hundreds of guests, including former slum residents, filled the Grand Hall, their lives forever changed by the initiative. Trump stepped onto the stage, his gaze scanning the crowd before speaking. "When I first saw Martha and Emma standing on the street with nothing but a cardboard sign, I didn't just see 2 people. I saw an entire community that had been forgotten. But more importantly, I saw resilience. I saw hope. Change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with small acts, like a little girl standing up for her grandmother." Today, we celebrate not just the help given, but the lives changed. And let me make one thing clear, no one will be left behind again. As Trump concluded his speech, he called Emma and Grandma Martha to the stage. The room fell silent as the grandmother and granddaughter walked forward, hand in hand. Emma, dressed simply but proudly, looked out at the audience and spoke in a voice filled with newfound confidence. "I'm just a kid with an old cardboard sign," she said, but because someone stopped to listen, everything changed. The moment Emma stepped forward, her voice carried across the silent hall. People stopped to listen. "My grandmother and I aren't alone anymore. Now I know that with courage and faith, we can change the world. Thank you, Mr. Trump, and thank you to everyone who helped us in our community." The room erupted in applause, a wave of emotion washing over those present. Many in the audience wiped away tears as they looked at the young girl, a beacon of hope and resilience. Months later, in the same place that had once been a neglected slum and garbage dump, a monument was unveiled. The statue depicted a young girl holding hands with an elderly woman, with newly built homes in the background. At the base, a simple but powerful message was inscribed: "Hope begins in the smallest places." Emma and Martha stood before the monument, their hearts full. Martha's voice trembled as she whispered, "Did you ever think your cardboard sign would lead to this?" Emma smiled, her eyes filled with determination. "It wasn't the sign, Grandma. It was the kindness of those who stopped to listen." Their story didn't stop there. The movement sparked by their plea spread across the nation. Communities that had long been forgotten were finally receiving the help they desperately needed. In the flood-stricken South, a new levee system was constructed, ensuring safety for generations to come. In the Midwest, homeless veterans and their families were given housing and vocational training programs to help them reintegrate into society. In the West, a school was built in a remote mountainous region, bringing education to children who had never before stepped foot in a classroom. The transformation wasn't just physical. A deep sense of unity and collective responsibility spread throughout the country. People who had never met before came together to create lasting change. Watching a news segment on the slum's transformation, Trump smiled slightly but remained contemplative. One of his advisors asked, "How do you feel about all this?" Trump's response was firm. "I didn't do this to feel good. I did it out of duty. And that duty doesn't end here. There are still communities out there like this one. We can't stop now. This is just the beginning." Turning to his team, his voice was resolute. "Prepare the next plan. This journey has no end. We keep going until no one has to live like that anymore." 6 months later, the transformation was undeniable. What was once a slum had become a model for change. The streets were clean, paved with bricks instead of strewn with garbage. Ramshackle houses had been replaced with sturdy, safe homes built through a combination of charitable donations and government support. At the heart of the community, a park flourished where there had once been only filth. Children laughed as they played, their voices carrying through the air. Emma held Martha's hand, her eyes scanning the vibrant scene before them. "Grandma, is this a dream?" Martha stroked her granddaughter's hair, her own eyes brimming with emotion. "No, Emma, this is real. And it all started with your courage." The movement continued to spread beyond that single community. Housing projects flourished, with over 10,000 homes built or renovated for struggling families within just 6 months. Construction companies pledged to cut costs and accelerate progress, ensuring that families once living in tents or temporary shelters had real homes before winter arrived. These homes were not just 4 walls and a roof, they came with solar panels, access to clean water, and communal spaces to foster a sense of togetherness. Education and vocational training became a cornerstone of the movement. Centers opened across struggling communities, offering free courses in mechanics, construction, and technology. Mobile schools were deployed in remote areas, ensuring that children like Emma had the opportunity to learn. Healthcare access improved as well, with mobile clinics traveling to underserved areas, offering free checkups, medication, and vaccinations. People who had never had access to medical care were now being treated with dignity. Emma's story resonated nationwide. She was invited to speak at major events, inspiring millions. At the launch of an educational support program for underprivileged children, she took the stage, gripping Martha's hand. "I once thought I was too small to change anything. But I've learned that when we stand up and ask for what's right, the world listens. I don't just want to thank Mr. Trump, I want to thank everyone who helped us. You didn't just change our lives, you gave me a chance to dream." The hall thundered with applause. Emma smiled brightly, hope radiating from her. Her message was clear: change starts with one small act, and kindness has the power to reshape the world. A year after Trump stopped his car for Emma and Martha, a national monument was unveiled at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This monument was dedicated to the Hope for the Forgotten movement and those who had been left behind. It depicted a soldier kneeling beside a young girl holding a cardboard sign, with the backdrop of new homes and the American flag waving proudly. Inscribed at the base were the words, "They gave everything. Now it's our duty to never forget." The dedication ceremony was attended by thousands, volunteers, charities, and families who had benefited from the movement. Emma and Martha sat in the front row, gazing at the monument in silence. When Trump took the stage, his voice was unwavering. "This monument is not just a symbol of courage and hope. It's a reminder of our responsibility to keep acting. Every child like Emma, every family like Martha's, deserves a better life. And we won't stop until that vision becomes reality." As the applause settled, Emma was invited onto the stage with Martha. No longer shy, she addressed the crowd with confidence. "One small act can spark big changes. It wasn't my cardboard sign that changed our lives, it was the kindness of those who stopped to listen. I hope each of you will continue to do the same for others in need." As Emma's words echoed across the crowd, people rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Martha squeezed Emma's hand tightly, her voice trembling with pride. "Emma," she whispered, "you haven't just changed my life, you've changed the world." As Trump's motorcade left the ceremony, he gazed out the window, deep in thought. An advisor broke the silence. "You've accomplished so much, sir. Is there anywhere else we need to go?" Trump's response was unwavering. "Every struggling community, every child who needs a chance. That's where we need to go. This journey isn't about stopping at a monument. It must continue, day by day, action by action, until no one is forgotten." His eyes lingered on the vast, open landscape beyond the window, and he murmured to himself, "Emma made the world listen. Now it's our turn not to stay silent." Across the globe, stories like Martha and Emma's are not unique to one nation. From the overcrowded slums of Asia to struggling rural villages in Africa and neglected communities in South America, millions live under the shadow of poverty and despair. But the impact of a single act of kindness knows no borders. During an international press conference, Trump announced a bold new initiative, the Global Hope Project. Unlike short-term relief efforts, this movement aimed at fostering long-term, sustainable change for impoverished communities worldwide. We've seen the power of unity when people come together to uplift the forgotten, Trump declared. But we cannot stop here. Starting today, we will extend that hope to every corner of the world. The Global Hope Project was structured into 3 key areas, each addressing a fundamental issue faced by struggling populations. First, tackling poverty. The Global Clean Water Program partnered with international organizations and innovative tech firms to install water filtration systems in remote villages across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, where millions lacked access to safe drinking water. Alongside this, the Food Aid and Agricultural Development Initiative provided emergency food supplies to communities affected by natural disasters and conflict while also training local farmers in sustainable agricultural practices to ensure lasting food security. Second, expanding education. New schools were built in the most isolated regions, giving children access to proper education for the first time. The Global Hope Scholarship Program awarded financial aid to exceptional students from impoverished backgrounds, granting them the opportunity to study at some of the world's most prestigious institutions. Third, providing comprehensive healthcare. Mobile medical clinics were dispatched to underserved regions, offering free medical checkups, vaccinations, and urgent care. Additionally, special maternal and child health care programs were established to provide support for expectant mothers and newborns, particularly in areas where infant mortality rates were alarmingly high. Emma and Martha's story quickly spread beyond America, resonating with people from all walks of life. A documentary depicting their journey and the transformation of their community was translated into over 50 languages. The film aired on international television and went viral on social media, inspiring movements around the world. In a remote African village, a 12-year-old girl named Amara watched the film during a charity screening. Afterward, she turned to her mother and said, "If Emma can do it, so can I. I won't let our family go hungry anymore." Her words became a rallying cry across the continent: "If Emma can, we can too." However, the path to progress was not without challenges. In South America, landslides and flooding had destroyed vital roads, making it impossible to transport building materials to communities in need. Upon hearing of the crisis, Trump ordered the use of helicopters to deliver supplies. In certain regions, local authorities resisted, fearing the initiative would threaten their control. To navigate these tensions, diplomatic teams were deployed to work alongside governments, ensuring that the movement's purpose was clear: it was there to serve, not disrupt. Funding also proved to be an ongoing hurdle. When major projects stalled due to financial shortages, Trump spearheaded a global fundraising campaign, rallying donors and corporations to contribute. The event raised over $1 billion, keeping the mission alive. To mark the one-year anniversary of the Global Hope Project, a monumental event, the Global Hope Festival, was hosted in New York City. Thousands attended: volunteers, beneficiaries, and representatives from charitable organizations, coming together to celebrate the lives changed and the work still to be done. Emma, now a confident teenager, took the stage with Martha beside her. As the crowd quieted, she spoke. "I used to think I was too small to make a difference," she said. "But I've learned that courage can create change. I hope my story inspires you all to stand up and bring hope to others." After her speech, a young boy from Africa who had received a scholarship approached her and said, "Because of you, I dared to dream." "Thank you, Emma." Emma smiled warmly, taking his hand. "We can all make a difference if we never lose hope." Trump closed the event with a powerful message, reminding everyone that this movement was not a fleeting campaign but a commitment to humanity. Every child like Emma, every community like Martha's, teaches us that no one should be forgotten. This mission does not end here, it's only the beginning. As Trump's motorcade left the event, he sat in deep thought. An aide beside him hesitated before asking, "Sir, do you think we'll ever see a day where movements like this won't be needed?" Trump's expression softened. "That's my greatest hope," he said. "A world where we no longer need these efforts because suffering has ended. But until that day comes, we must keep going. This isn't just my journey, it belongs to all of us." 5 years after the inception of the Hope for the Forgotten movement, its impact had surpassed all expectations. Across the globe, From rural villages in Africa and Southeast Asia to war-torn regions in the Middle East, the initiative had touched millions of lives. Back in the United States, the once impoverished area where Emma and Martha lived had been completely transformed. Now known as Hope Village, it stood as a model community, featuring modern homes, a state-of-the-art school, and a fully equipped medical center. Emma, now a young adult, worked as a teacher in the village's school, guiding a new generation of children toward a brighter future. The old cardboard sign she had once held as a desperate plea now hung proudly in her classroom, a powerful reminder of how one act of courage could ignite a movement. One day, she asked her students, "If I could change the world with just a sign, what do you think you can do with a school full of knowledge?" A shy boy raised his hand. "I want to become a doctor so no one in my family has to fear illness again." Emma smiled, nodding. "I believe in you. We can all make a difference." The movement continued expanding globally, launching new initiatives. First, eradicating poverty. More than 5,000 water filtration systems had been installed in remote communities across Africa and South Asia, providing clean drinking water to over 10 million people. A mother in Kenya expressed her gratitude. "My children were always sick from dirty water. Now, for the first time, we have clean water in our village. It feels like a miracle." The Seeds of Hope program distributed agricultural tools, seeds, and training, helping communities establish self-sufficient farming and break free from the cycle of hunger. Second, expanding education. Over 1,000 schools had been built in remote areas, ensuring that children no longer had to walk for miles just to receive an education. A young girl in Peru shared, "I used to study under a leaking roof. Now, I have a real school. One day, I want to be a teacher." The Global Hope Scholarship Program continued to support talented students, opening doors that had once seemed impossible to reach. The story of Emma and Martha had become more than just a tale of personal resilience, it had ignited a worldwide movement that refused to slow down. The mission remained clear: to create a future where no one was left behind. Access to quality education remains a distant dream for many, but initiatives focused on scholarships are changing that reality. Programs dedicated to providing opportunities for underprivileged students have opened doors to top universities, ensuring that bright minds are not lost due to financial constraints. The transformation is evident in countless success stories, proving that education is a powerful tool for breaking the cycle of poverty. Healthcare remains a pressing issue in remote communities, where access to medical assistance is scarce. Mobile health clinics have emerged as a beacon of hope, bringing essential medical care to millions who would otherwise go untreated. An elderly woman in Indonesia once shared her astonishment at receiving medical attention for the first time in her life, expressing gratitude for the doctors who saved her and the children in her village. Maternal and child health programs have also played a crucial role in reducing mortality rates among pregnant women and newborns, ensuring healthier beginnings for the next generation. As the movement gained momentum, its impact was immortalized with a monument at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The sculpture of a young girl holding a cardboard sign reading, "Hope Never Fades," serves as a reminder of the resilience and determination of those who fight for a better future. The inscription at its base, "Plant seeds of kindness so no one is left behind," echoes the core mission of the movement. Emma and Martha, two individuals whose journey inspired millions, continued their work in Hope Village. Martha, now frail with age, often watched Emma teaching children, knowing that her legacy was in safe hands. One evening, as Emma returned from school, Martha took her hand and asked, "Emma, you've changed the world. Are you proud of yourself?" With a warm smile, Emma responded, "I am, but there's still so much to do. Every child deserves the same opportunities I had. I won't stop, Grandma." Martha squeezed her hand gently and whispered, "Keep going, Emma. You're the hope of a generation." Despite its many accomplishments, the movement faced ongoing challenges. Climate change caused floods and droughts that destroyed newly built infrastructure. Wars and conflicts in various regions disrupted aid efforts, making it difficult to reach those in need. However, in a meeting at the movement's headquarters, Trump made a powerful statement: "We can't solve every problem overnight, but giving up is not an option. As long as there's one person left behind, we must keep going." A decade after the initiative began, its results were undeniable. Over 20 million people gained access to clean water, Millions of children entered classrooms for the first time, and more than 10,000 impoverished communities underwent complete reconstruction. At a grand 10-year anniversary celebration in Washington, Trump addressed a crowd of thousands, reaffirming the mission: "This isn't about fame or glory, it's about responsibility. This movement belongs to all of us. Our journey won't end until no one is left forgotten." Turning to Emma, now a renowned social activist, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "Your journey is just beginning. Keep spreading hope. You've already changed the world, and I know you'll do even more." Emma met his gaze, her determination unwavering. "I promise I won't stop." The story of Martha, Emma, and the movement they helped build may have reached a milestone, but its message continues to resonate. This isn't just a story of courage, it is a call to action. Around the world, countless individuals like Emma and Martha await a helping hand. They may not hold signs on the streets, but their struggles and dreams for a better future are very real. Change starts with small actions. Donating to organizations that provide aid, volunteering time to support the less fortunate, and sharing stories that inspire kindness can all make a difference. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel and join us in spreading hope. Every subscription, every share, and every act of compassion adds another spark of light to the world. Together, we can create a future where no one is left behind.